What's up, everybody? Welcome to Down and Dirty with Michael Julian. I'm your host, Michael Julian, and on this show, we're getting raw, real, and leaving no stone unturned. Each week, I sit down with some truly remarkable people who have overcome immense challenges and adversity in their lives. Whether it was childhood trauma, discrimination, mental health struggles, or any other obstacle thrown their way, my guests aren't just survivors, they're warriors who took their pain and turned it into power. They'll share their unfiltered stories and the life lessons that helped shape them into the forces they are today. So get comfortable because we're about to get down and dirty. You'll hear firsthand how our darkest moments can unexpectedly light the path towards our greatest growth and success. Let's dive in and prepare to feel inspired. Alan Baker, I'm excited to have you here with me today. By way of introduction, well, first of all, you're an internationally known grandmaster martial artist. You've been doing this for 40 plus years. Now, well, before I get into that, here's our history. We know each other through the executive protection community because so much of what you do is about protecting yourself and protecting others. So you're kind of the guy in my world. Like in executive protection, if anybody's talking about anybody that has anything to do with martial arts or self, defense or protection from a physical, hands-on standpoint, you're the guy. You're involved in all the associations. You go to the conferences. Everybody knows you. So that's my point of reference, and I've known you just by way of being around you for many, many years. Now we've had a chance over the last few years. We start to talk. We speak at the same conferences. We might hang out briefly, but very superficially. And then and then your social media presence starts to build. My social media starts to build. So now I know you by way of social media, and now my friends, and we all talk about you. And but I never knew anything beyond the badass, master guy, practitioner that you are, until just semi-recently we started talking, more as friends, and I've gotten to know you, and man, are there a lot of layers to Alan Baker. And today we're going to peel back those layers, which I'm excited to do, because there's probably a lot of people out there that knew you like I did, just the surface, just the badass, kick-ass, super ninja guy. I probably shouldn't use that. It's probably not cool to say that in your world, because a ninja is a very specific skill set. But what I'm excited to do, and we did about a 25-minute live stream on air, live with me a while back, and I really started peeling back, and I just touched the surface. So I can't wait for the rest of the world who doesn't know you, who knew you the way I did, which was just on the surface, to get to know you, who I'm sure you have several people in your life that know you to a much deeper degree. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. Now, so Alan Baker is an internationally recognized grandmaster, and Sifu is your title.
Yes, I picked that up probably early 90s. It's Cantonese, means teacher or instructor, and it just stuck.
Yeah. I love it. Well, and the first time I ever heard it was when I watched Kung Fu Panda, and Jack Black said at Sifu to, what was his name? The guy that played Sifu, little short actor. He's been around, Academy Award winner. And I love that. But let me ask you a question. You call yourself an agent of change. Now that's powerful. To me, the norm is easy. The norm is, it's not going along with the resistance and just saying, okay, whatever. Going against the resistance and going against the norm, an agent of change. Explain what you mean by that, because that's pretty cool.
Well, I actually picked that up from a mother of one of my students in one of my academies years ago. And I was saying something to her son, and he went back on the mat, and she walked over to me and said, "You're an agent of change." And I was like, wow, that's pretty awesome.
What happened in that moment that prompted her to say that?
I changed the young man's perspective. And one of the things is, you can get caught up in how you see something in that moment. It affects you emotionally, and really it pulls your perspective down. And I pointed out 1,000-mile view, bigger perspective, and it changed the way he was seeing things in that moment. And then he chose to go do something more productive. and which is part of my job at the academy. And mom saw that, and she said, "You're an agent of change."
Okay. So essentially what you did, and it may have happened one day, but in that moment in time, you literally changed, you helped that person evolve from who they were to see a bigger picture, to probably grow and mature, and you probably changed that person's life. I mean, he's now going to look at the world a little bit differently.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. And who knows what that little moment in time may have done to change the course of his life. So an agent of change is a very, very powerful title or description. So that's pretty neat. Give me some other examples of how that is, how you have helped prompt change. Because when you're a teacher, when you're a master, when you've got knowledge and information and you're giving it to people who don't have the same knowledge, you're helping them evolve. You're broadening their horizons. You're making them think about the world. As a teacher, where that's literally your job and your chosen profession, that's got to happen all the damn time. So can you think of any other examples where that's happened?
Uh, you said it, all the time on the mat. A lot of people will come into the martial arts because they want to learn self-defense. They want to learn how to fight. But it is a environment of growth. And there's so many opportunities that, we have these opportunities in life. Occasionally life will throw a curveball at you, and you have to make an adjustment and you grow from it. You get curveballs multiple times a week in a martial arts academy. You're constantly being placed under pressure, stress, pain. And, those are the things that hone you, they grow you, especially for individuals that are on that warrior's path, that are choosing to walk in that direction. It's part of it. It's one of the tools that makes you grow. And we get exposed, we create those environments on the mat. You get used to dealing with stress, pressure, pain. You get comfortable being uncomfortable. You start to develop that as a life skill. Ultimately, you're not just learning knowledge or putting it in your head. You change. You should be a different person after a period of time, physically, mentally, spiritually. You evolve and grow to be able to handle more. Just if we were to use the example of fighting, to be able to enter into that environment of physical exchange, emotional exchange, and strive. If you've built that armor, that toughness, mentally, physically, emotionally, you're gonna do better. Same thing in life, So I see those lessons. They learn them on the mat, and I get the opportunity on occasion to go, "Hey, this will work for you in the problems you're having in your real life too." Anytime you go outside the academy, and if you're struggling with that, hey, remember that time when this happened, when that happened. Look at how well you handled that. And there may be more emotion connected to the real life event, but you've spent this time preparing, not just for the ability to be able to fight or do defensive tactics. All of these life skills you've grown, and many of them don't even realize it until they have to deal with a real life event, and then they go, "Wow, I was better prepared for that than I thought I was."
Because it translates from the lessons they learn with fighting or protection or just physical strength. It translates into other aspects, spiritual, mental, all of that stuff.
Absolutely.
Now let's go back for a second. You mentioned the warrior's path. I love that term. Talk more about that. I want to know what that means to Alan Baker.
Um, I had many mentors and teachers when I was growing up. And, when I was younger, I was looking for those same things. I want to be a better fighter. I want to know more about self-defense, defensive tactics. And then I started to learn those same elements from my mentors. But generally, they were like between class or off the mat, or not necessarily in class. And they would go, "I see you're struggling with this, and I want to point this out as a way to improve the way you're handling it." But then I started to realize the same thing. Man, it not only works in this environment, it works in life. And I'm an avid note taker. I've got decades of handwritten notes, and a lot of the books would be just those life skills, just the ability to learn to seek failure instead of running from it, as a skill to improve yourself. So over the years, I had several books actually written of just life skills. Nothing really related to fighting, just overall self improvement. And then the pandemic happened, and we closed the school, and I took a couple of months off and went up to the mountains of the Shenandoah Valley. And I ended up sitting in a sunroom at a house, and I just started writing. And after about a month, I realized could be a book. Maybe a couple of weeks later, I'm like, okay, it's going to be a book. And that's when I started to compile more of a program of personal development. And I had always nicknamed that path the Warrior's Path. Sometimes I think it's confused as just this,
Right.
but there's so much more in it, and it's a tool of change. And so that I was putting that together to present that because it's not common.
Can I interrupt you for a second? I've been trying really hard to think of a name for this podcast, and I would love to use Warrior's Path, but I'm not even going to ask because now, did you name your book that?
Yes.
Okay, so now I definitely won't do that. Okay, that's such a great concept, and warrior by definition, and I did look it up, is typically thought of as a soldier or someone associated with battle and or war. But battle, I think, is the key term if you're going to be talking about a warrior. And a warrior can be someone battling cancer.
Agreed.
A warrior can be someone battling any adversity, any type of racism, sexism, anything that is a massive force standing in their way of getting where they want to be is going to be a warrior. And they're battling that entity, that source, that power, that energy. So that's a really, really powerful concept. Life.
For everybody.
We're all warriors when it comes to that.
We have choices when we're in the stream of life. I can turn and just let the water push me. I can ride along with the current, or I can choose to turn in and fight. I take control, or I do my best. And I think that's a warrior, And is it a winning battle? No. But you still choose to walk that path. And sometimes I'll hear, I'll never learn all of this information, but you still go forward. That's the choice of a warrior. We know the outcome, but we're still walking in that direction. Not everybody chooses that.
And it's not just about the outcome. It's like they say, it's not just not just the journey. It's the journey, not just the destination.
Agreed.
If you are focused on that journey as a warrior, even if you know the outcome, you can still take pride and pleasure and fulfillment in your progress in the journey, regardless of the destination or regardless of the result.
Agreed. Absolutely. It's how you walk the path. Are you walking it quietly, or are you projecting? Are you influencing? Do people see what you're doing and choose to live at a higher level, choose to give it another day of effort? That's the path.
Yeah. Now,
there really is no arrival. I say that commonly, well, why do you continually seek to grow and train? Don't you have enough? Well, that's part of, to me, a warrior's mindset too, is no, there's no arrival. You hear guys go, well, I'm here now. That's why I kind of stay away from the word master. I'm not a big fan of it because it assumes arrival.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I'm not there yet. It never will be, but I still choose to walk. And that's part of the warrior tenets and
mindset. And now I don't want to make this about me or my program, but I can't help, because when you're talking about what you're talking about in my active shooter program, the Alive Active Shooter program, which obviously you're very familiar with, and I think you saw me teach it in Virginia or wherever at the EPI. I tell everybody, but especially prospective clients, this program is not just about active shooter survival. At the end of the day, it's about empowerment. I just deliver it in directed and in association with the idea of surviving an active shooter. You're talking about empowerment, and you empower people, especially when you're talking about not the end result, but the journey of getting there, the warrior's path. You are empowered to take on any challenge. Now, overcoming it, obviously, is a result we want. If we're talking long-term, the end of your life, becoming a master, as you say, and I can totally understand why you're uncomfortable with that. That's assuming you've achieved all things, everything, omnipresence, and you're there. We're never, ever, ever going to finally get there to call
Agreed.
ourselves master. But the empowerment thing is what that is what is coming up in my mind as you talk about the warrior's path. You empower people to focus on the journey, to focus on the path, not this final destination. Because take pleasure in the progress you make every day in combating and overcoming this challenge, right?
Agreed.
Yeah.
It's in the here and now. A lot of times individuals, they think they arrive. I've arrived. What's one of the first things they do? Look over their shoulder at what they did.
Yeah.
It's look at it now. Live
Yeah.
it now. If we were to loosely use the word, master it now. Operate at a higher level. Learn those life skills that are going to make you walk at an elevated journey.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think is important to remember is if your mindset, we talk a lot about mindset in my program. I think mindset is so important in life.
Mm.
If we're talking in terms of mindset and one step at a time and looking forward, if you're always looking forward, what you're not doing, which so many of us do, me included, I will own every shit thing that I do every day to make me less of the person that I want to be. If we're constantly focused on looking forward, what we're not doing is laboring over the past, which oftentimes, if we turn around and look, we're dragging an anchor and it's slowing down our progress and we're not getting to where we want to be because we're focused on what's going on there. Now, do we want to think about the past? Do we want to chew on that and think about how to not make those same mistakes? Of course. But if you're focused on this journey and taking steps every day, we're not laboring over the things that we've maybe not done so well that's making us feel not so good about ourselves because we're letting that shit go. We're cutting the anchor.
Agreed.
And we're moving forward.
And not only the shit, the good stuff. I hear the term a lot, the good old days. Remember when? And I get on my buddies for that now because right now is the good old days,
Yep.
And
tomorrow's going to be
agreed.
today will be yesterday's good old day, but let's focus on tomorrow.
So what makes that the good old days? Why? What are you not doing now that makes this moment the good old days? Your ego. You can't reproduce that, so we're looking into the past and dragging this, good or bad, along with us. Cut that loose, man. Decide what I've got to do now to make this moment the good old days. I get together with somebody that is they operate at a high level, vibrate at a high level. We're talking about what this morning when we got together? What were we talking about? Not the good old days. We're talking about how can I change this? How can I improve that? How can I influence more people, help more people? And with forward vision and forward perspective, way more powerful.
Yep. All right. Now, people that have seen my podcast or know me know that I tend to go all over the place and I'll go off on a tangent and then forget where I'm going and ask you to bring me back. But so I'm going to do that because that's what I'm good at. Let's go back a little bit. We want to hear from Alan Baker about Alan Baker. Give us a little history. Where did it start? Growing up, and we'll dig deeper because we're peeling back the onion. Okay, but give us a 5-minute snapshot of Alan Baker from day one to here, and remember, I already know some stuff about you. We're going to dig into the accident, all that stuff. We're going to talk about that, but just kind of give us a foundation, give us a framework of Alan Baker.
Rowdy youth. And
where were you born?
Cleveland, Tennessee.
Okay.
A little bit outside of Chattanooga.
Okay.
And at that time, difficult to handle. My mom comes from a large family, and everyone in the family had 3 kids. Mom's plans were 3, and she ended up just having 1. Yeah, me. So at one point, she got a letter sent home from school. We would like to put your son on drugs because we think he has ADHD. He has this condition, and it helps us control him. And thank goodness Mom was like, nope, we're not going to do that. But she went and said, what can I do to fix this kid? What can I do to help? And that's what introduced me to the martial arts. Took me to the local.
Was Dad around?
Yes,
Okay.
right.
But mom was the force. She was the one that made the
Yes.
decisions.
Dad
about
was
it.
very busy. He worked in construction and had his own business and was very busy. So mom did a lot of the raising. And so she took me to the local karate studio. At that time, it was in a fallout shelter. Starting to date myself here a little bit. And
You're still younger than me, so it's okay to.
you know, I go in, and Brent Helms was the teacher, and he had two sons who obviously grew up in this. And first day, he's like, "I'm going to stick this kid in there with my kids," and they beat
the hell
my
out
ass, one after another, and I loved it. I loved it because here I am. I get to go to this place and do what I like, and not get in trouble.
Yeah.
Because you go to the school and do that, it's trouble.
Yeah.
You're out in the neighborhood with your buddies, it's trouble. But you could go here, and they expected you to brawl with your buddies. So hook, line, and sinker.
So you've always been a scrapper.
But yes,
Okay.
I knew at that moment what I was going to do the rest of my life. Everybody thought I was nuts and didn't believe it for the first 30 or 40 years, but yeah, here we are. And then from that point on, you know, at that time, you could work in the neighborhood and make money, mow yards, do different things. And I think by the time I was 13, 14 years old, I was already starting to try to make more money in order to join the other schools in this small town. There was a point where I was a member at all of them, just because I was eat up by it. I loved it. And moving forward, I started to venture out of Cleveland and get into schools that were a 2 or 3 hour drive from the small town.
Wow.
Obviously, at that point, I was starting to drive, and I was blowing all my money on it, which I did for years. But that was the beginning of it. I was always amazed by the different paths of information. You know, one system and its history and what it was founded on, and then another system totally different, but founded and built by someone else. They had a different experience.
And context, it seems like, was very important to you. You wanted to know where this came from and why it was created, so you could totally immerse yourself in it, and then the next one and the next one.
Yes, like I said, I loved it. I wanted to know everything there was about it, and very fortunate to move forward. And I do a lot of research on martial arts. Sometimes very obscure ones. And through the research, I started to realize these individuals are the pinnacle of the industry. And so I want to go see them. So got more of a real job and started to travel and train with what now is considered some of the top martial artists in the world in different areas. And that's how I spent my life. Eventually, around 1990, started getting involved in the industry on a professional level. We had a school and eventually two schools in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I spent my days training and getting paid for it, and blew all of the money on travel and training. At one point, I've lived at several academies. Because I blew all my money on plane tickets and training. And at one point, I met a young lady, probably mid-90s, and you know, it's like, wow, let's go on a date. She had to help me buy a pair of jeans. All I wore was sweatpants and the t-shirts from the gym.
Did you ever wrestle? Were you ever a wrestler in school?
Briefly.
Okay, that was kind of my sport, so I can identify with that. You would have been a tough wrestler, I'm sure.
Well, I enjoy grappling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, quickly tell me a couple of highlights. As far as you said, you've met several of these individuals that you really respected. Who are a couple of quick stories? And remember, we're doing a 5-minute overview, which we're already past of your timeline, but that's okay. We're going to keep going, and I'm doing a terrible job of keeping us on track because I'm going to ask you questions like this. Give me a couple of quick stories about, highlights where you met somebody and you went, wow, this is like a dream come true for me.
Guru Dan Anasanto. He's
Dan Anasanto used to train with Bruce Lee.
Correct.
Was in several of the books with him as the second guy he was with. And the only reason I know that sorry to interrupt and make this about
It's
me
okay.
again, but when I was a kid and decided I wanted to get into martial arts, my parents would not pay for me to go to any of them, and we lived 10 miles out of town, so I had to ride my bike. So I went to the bookstore and I bought a bunch of
Mm.
Bruce Lee books, and Dan Inosanto was always the number 2 guy. And then when I was 18 or 19, 18 years old, I became a valet. No, I was in college. I was 19. I became a valet, and I worked with his nephew as a valet
Awesome.
in Palm Desert. So he told me all kinds of really cool stories about Dan. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, Dan, he's a legend.
Yes.
There'll never be another
Nope.
Dan Inosanto. But what the man's done in his career is incredible. The amount of information he has accumulated is just incredible. Another one would be Eric Paulson. Eric is actually one of Guru Dan's instructors who has gone to develop his own system. Yeah, he's done a lot of catch wrestling, judo, jiu-jitsu. Pedro Sauer, who is probably known more in the Brazilian jiu-jitsu world. The Machado brothers, I met them through Guru Dan and Eric. Have an opportunity to see those guys and train with them a couple times a year, have for years. Tim Wade, who teaches Pikiti Tertia, which is mainly known as a stick and blade system. Incredible knife fighter. And those are some of them.
That's awesome. That's got to be pretty cool. I mean, that would be like, being a kid and wanting to be an actor and looking at, who just won Robert Downey Jr. or one of these actors that just won an Academy Award, and going, God, I would just love to be an actor like them, and then ending up in a movie with them. That's got to be like the pinnacle of going,
Yep. Yes.
wow, yeah, that's really cool. Okay, so training, meeting, you've immersed yourself, you are living for this, not every discipline you decided to get, but this whole lifestyle for you. Okay, so now we up to like high school, college?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, so what happens then? Did you go to college?
Well, for about 6 months.
Okay.
It was a period where I was deciding which direction I was going to go, and I obviously ended up becoming a professional martial artist.
Which, I mean, you had been going to college your whole life by training with these guys, though, really, for what you decided to do.
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then 19, had a car wreck, pretty drastic.
As you described it before in our conversation, it was literally life-changing. This was a massive, horrific car accident.
Yes, I got hit head on by a large construction company truck, largest construction company in the U.S. And severe facial injuries, brain injury. Me and my passenger was much worse. And I was pinned in the car. I was trapped in the car for a moment. I didn't think I could get out, but that changed a lot of things. The doc after that was, you can never get hit in the head. Here's a list of things you can't do.
And here you are going to spend the rest of your life possibly getting hit in the head.
Yes, and had done a tremendous amount of it up to that point.
And that's a great reason to, that's quite a motivator. If you're going to be doing what you do, well, I could die if I get hit in the head, so I'm going to be really good at what I do and not get hit in the head.
Yeah, it changes the way you look at some things and how you train.
Yeah.
And it did adjust the journey a little bit. I knew I was never going to stop. But at that point, I was like, I'm going to try to become the best teacher I can. And, I'm going to immerse myself in the culture in one way or the other. And that's kind of took a little turn in that direction.
Well, okay. So talk a little bit more about that. Like, you literally had to have reconstructive surgery and stuff done because you were so messed, like it crushed you basically.
Yes. I mean, at the moment of the wreck, I remember coming to, and I wasn't really aware of the passenger immediately. And my hands were broken, the ribs were broken, the face. I didn't know how bad the face was at that moment, but I started to move and figured I can't get out. And maybe I'll wait. Maybe someone will come by, they'll drive by or something. It felt like an eternity. And, no one came. And so, you kind of start to become more aware of what's going on. And I looked over at my passenger, and she was on the dash. Face was toward me, eyes were open, and it was obvious she was not there. It was bad. And at that moment, talk about a perspective change, that changed my perspective. And that's what I got, probably damaged myself more. It's an emotional thing for me.
Sure.
Getting out of that car than what the car did to me, because I had to get out at that point. And I walked, found a house, knocked on the door. The lady opened the door, and she had a look of shock on her face. And that's when I was like, I touched my face and just looked down. Her porch was covered in blood. And I was just like, I just had a wreck right in front of your house. Could you call emergency services? And went back out to the car to try to help the passenger. Ambulance shows up. The guy touched me on the shoulder. He told me this later. I didn't know, but he's like, yeah, I walked up to you and I was trying to care for the passenger. And when he touched my shoulder, I looked and just passed out. Woke up in the hospital. So trauma in multiple areas there.
Yeah.
And that was the event that made me kind of alter the course. Up to that point, I was thinking, I'm going to be a fighter. This is the path I'm going to take. And you after something like that, you can't. He actually have implants that can't take much abuse.
Right.
Right. So.
Wow. So many things I want to ask you about that. So that literally changed the course of your life, and you went from potentially being, who knows how far you would have gone as a fighter to win everything there is, to having to become a teacher, because now being a fighter could kill you or disfigure you or something terrible.
That's what they said.
Yeah. Do you remember? Can you describe the emotion or the energy you felt when you realized the significance of what happens? I mean, did you think, was it an aha revelation? Okay, this defining second in time, my life has changed forever?
Well, that probably came later after the event because, I was concerned about the passenger, and there obviously was a lawsuit involved with this. And, those things that's almost like a second wreck.
Yes.
Having to deal with that. And it was a powerful company, and they brought in some pretty big people to be able to counter this thing that was obviously the other guy's fault.
Clearly their fault.
Yes. And, going through that at a young age, that introduces you to the world a little bit.
Yeah.
And then the damages and the injuries that my passenger had, I dealt for that probably for a year. And it's not that I didn't have the thought, but it was later that I actually was like, oh wow, I'm going to have to rethink some things as far as training and the course of life. So it probably hit me a little later after that, just due to everything else that was connected to that event.
And you being the guy that you are and what you're made of, instead of allowing that to be an excuse to surrender and give up and not move forward, you simply made a left turn and decided, I'm going to take all this knowledge and I'm going to make something out of that and still be great, but just help other people be great in the meantime.
Yes. And a lot of that's got to do with the mentors leading up to that moment and how they taught me. Getting out of the car, I can say, had a lot to do with the individuals that mentored me and taught me up to that point.
Yeah.
And, not because of a punch or a kick, but because of what they implanted there.
Sure.
Same thing with the choice and path afterwards. It's, baseline, are you a fighter? Are you a warrior? Are you going to choose to put your head down and dig into it, regardless of the direction, or sit back, rock on your heels?
Yep. Lean forward or fall back. Okay, so tell me your thoughts. And again, we're going to go off on a tangent. That's okay. There's no formal format here. Alan, you know firsthand, and you can respect and appreciate better than anybody discipline, because without it, you wouldn't be where you are.
Mm-mm.
and I have no problem getting into current affairs and controversial stuff. How, what are your thoughts on how the new generation is affected by that lack of wanting to lean forward and focusing on learning discipline? I mean, would you agree, or what are your thoughts on how our newest generation is, what they become, and what they will be in 10 and 20 and 30 years when it really matters because they're adults and they actually have uh, they have an impact on the course of our country and our culture? Do you think that we have the same discipline? Are we teaching the same amount of discipline that we did when you and I were, because we're the same age when you and I were young? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I don't think so. And you can look at old photographs of individuals. Um, I remember when someone sent me one the other day of a street. I think it was in the 40s, and you could just see the physical fitness of these individuals, the hardness of these individuals.
Strength of character as well in
Correct.
their facial
Yeah, you
expressions.
could see the determination of will.
Yeah.
No, we don't have that anymore. And what built it for those people? Struggle, pain. And you're almost not supposed to say those things. We don't want pain. We don't want struggle. Yes, we do.
Yes.
Yes, we do. And if I don't, I need to go manufacture some
Yeah.
in some way, because how am I going to turn out? That is a life skill in itself, to recognize where true growth comes from. And if I don't have it, I know life's going to give it to you, and that's not fun. And none of it's fun, but it depends on where you're going to go, who you're going to be. What do you want to present to the world? And you look at those two individuals. I want to be that soft one, or this guy over here, the one in the photo that struck me. The guy was in his teens.
Yeah.
And he had a tremendous amount of determination and power in his eyes. I was like, dude, I have that. And I need to put my head down.
Yep.
Go to class, manufacture some stress, some pain.
Yes.
And swim in it and deal with it and produce and create something that's going to step forward in chaos.
Yeah.
I tell my guys that all the time. It's like when the shit hits the fan. And it's interesting, we're talking because we're both in that same industry. You have a room full of people. One of them will step forward.
Yep.
Everyone else generally will step back from it. Or the phones will come out, but they're moving away from whatever that chaos is.
Yep.
I don't want to be that. I want to be that guy that steps forward, that instinctively steps forward, that's drawn to it, to do something, to make a change, to have an effect on this thing.
Well, yeah, I know what you're saying, and the thing, I'll tell you what's playing out in my mind right now, because I'm literally visualizing the effect of where we are now. The people that step forward, they take on a challenge, they overcome the challenge, they feel good about it. They're now smarter, more evolved, stronger because of the challenge. And now they can take on the next challenge. And life hurts a little bit less and less after every challenge because, I've already dealt with that. No big deal. I'm not going to stress. I'll knock that one out.
Right.
Now our culture, and I have a real strong opinion about the woke, quote unquote, wokeness of what supposedly we're supposed to be doing with our youth now. And that's making it easier and softer and more pleasant, which means less challenges, which means less progress, less overcoming, and less strength. And what I visualized was I travel a lot to teach and for pleasure and stuff. And I've had 2 trips in the last 2 weeks where I was in airports. And I sat and I watched, because that's the best people watching anywhere is an airport. And I sat and I watched, and the people that I saw, the young people in their teens and 20s, showing up in sandals, pajamas, carrying a pillow, some carrying a teddy bear or some other thing. I'm talking about a 25-year-old female. And I don't care about hair color. Knock yourself out. Hairdressers need to make money too. With 3 different colors in their hair, unkempt, not made up, in their pajamas, in an airport, holding their pillow. And you can tell, completely out of shape, and you can tell they've had no adversity, they've had no challenges, they've gained no strength by overcoming those challenges. And that is where that's where our youth is going. So imagine the adults they're going to be when it comes time to an outside force trying to take over, or some adversity that is going to test them and us as a civilization or as a society, and they're on the front line. Damn, that scares me.
But you have those few that see that, and they know and they agree with what we're saying here, and they're going to seek out that information. You know, but
Those are
one
the
of
sheep,
them,
the sheepdogs.
but one of them is a warrior, and he'll bring the rest of them home. That's the guys we want to find. That's the guys we want to help and show the path and give the information to, and be there for those guys. Because yes, maybe it's not going in the best direction, but you still have those warriors out there. And I mean, when it comes down to it, 100 men, but one brings them home.
I agree with that, but what scares me is if the sheep are so delicate. Look, you could take a leader, one of the greatest leaders in the history of civilization, as far as I'm concerned, is Jocko Willink. I mean, there's no better specimen of a leader, of a man, in my opinion. You could put him in charge of 1,000 of those people, and how much work is it going to take to get him in shape to help, carry the charge and actually overcome something like that could literally threaten our way of life?
Quite a bit.
Is it possible? I mean, he will draw the best out of those people, no question. But when you're starting with that little talent and skill, the best may not be good enough. So that scares me a little bit.
Yeah, agreed. I definitely.
All right, so college. So now you're out. You've been married a couple times.
Yes.
You've got a magnificent young lady in your life now that is kind of put the icing on the cake, and you're kind of everything you need. But let's get from high school, college to there.
Out of high school, like I said, chose to kind of go the path of a professional martial artist. Ended up opening a school, which turned into a couple of schools with another gentleman. And to put it simply, all I did was train and train more, travel, learn, probably for a 4 to 6 year period there. And didn't do much else other than that. Then I started to, I think around 94, 95, look at places that I could go to get closer to some of those individuals that I was talking about earlier. And it was either going to be LA with Guru Dan or Atlanta with Sifu Francis Fong. And I chose at that time to go to Atlanta. It was close to home. That's how I ended up in Atlanta, Georgia. Went down to train with him, which opened up so much more because obviously he introduced me to more individuals. And Atlanta's a bigger town. There's a lot of high-level guys there that I sought out and started training with, and started moving forward from there. Opened my own academy in 2002.
22 years ago.
Yep. And ran that. Eventually started to get introduced to the security industry.
Yeah.
About 15 years ago. The Executive Protection Institute, Doc Kobetz.
Dr. Kobetz, I went through his course in 2003, as a matter of fact, a year after you started your course.
That's awesome.
Your academy, yeah.
And Doc had some problems with his defensive tactics.
Yep.
They were trying different things pretty much every year. They had a new person come in. Let's try this. Let's try that.
Sure.
And when I came in, he told me what the problem was, and I said, well, I want to go through your school. So I went to the school actually a couple of times. And
what class were you?
76.
Okay, so you went a few years after. So when did you went through in about 06?
Yes. Okay. It's been a while back.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I started to get an opportunity to do some of the work. And then based on that.
So you've done EP?
Yes.
Okay, love that.
Yep.
I was not aware of.
Yeah. Some of my favorite events are working highly recognizable individuals at Comic-Cons.
Yeah.
Because, part of what I do is I put my hands on people, and you get to do that all day long.
Yep.
And based on that information and what I learned in the school, we designed the program for EPI from the inside out. And we built it specifically for the EP agent. And that led to meeting Joe Artura of Vehicle Dynamics Institute. And we eventually did one for him as well, obviously more focused in and around vehicles. And that idea happened many times, getting introduced to people. You know, it's one thing just to bring in martial arts, but it's a different thing to build it specifically for what you want.
Sure.
And, you know, there wasn't many people doing that. And so I would get introduced to different um, legs of the table of EP and got to build those programs for those individuals.
That's very cool. Now, again, I go all over the place, and you just sparked a thought, and I'm going to go ahead and drop it now. What you just said is it's very interesting to build a program specific to something.
Correct.
That leads me to something you and I are working on together.
Mm-hmm.
Most people know I've created the Alive Active Shooter Survival Training Program. We've got an online course, an instructor certification course, all that good stuff. You and I, you specifically actually, are the talent in this situation, but we are going to we'll fly to Scottsdale and film. We're gonna do the online course for self-defense and disarming.
Correct.
For specific to an active shooter situation.
Yes.
And you whipped up the curriculum and sent it to me in a heartbeat. So I'm excited to do that. Tell me what you've got. What are we going to see when this is done? What's Alan going to do to build this specific to disarming and a situation where there's an active shooter involved?
Well, I still am in the process of going through your course to get certified.
And you are going to become a certified instructor.
Yes.
So that's pretty exciting for me.
I might go through it a couple of times because part of that is I get to see how you think and get more involved in the environment of this thing. And I probably look for more sources just to get introduced to it, which probably come and see if you have additional information. And because the more I can learn about it, the more I can adjust that curriculum to specifically fit it. Mm-hmm. So what I've done with it so far is just kind of based on information that I've got from you and my own research. And it's very interesting. It's going to be a very unique program because of how the ambush scenario is set up, or, you know, if I'm having to deal with it by surprise.
Sure.
And determining, you know, the average person, what elements are they going to be able to use under pressure and you know, under force of stress in that type of environment. You know, it's not going to can't be complicated, has to be simple,
Absolutely.
Has to be effective.
Yep.
And has to be effective quickly. So we're going to put together some pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and I'm also I'm excited to get your feedback from your perspective, because look, I've done martial arts, I boxed, I wrestled, I was never great at any of those. I'm a jack of a few, a master of none. So the stuff that I created as a layperson, not an expert, not a Sifu, is very basic. And like you said, it's got to be simple. I mean, the thing that I teach, the one thing that I tell everybody to do is, if you've got the element of surprise, is your best weapon, or probably most easily accessible, is a pen or pencil.
Agreed.
And you're going to jam it through their eyeball, through the ocular hole in their skull, into the gray matter, to disrupt that electrical signal so that they're no longer capable, nor do they have the desire to try and hurt you. Now, it doesn't get any more primal or caveman than that. I mean, let's grab a pen and jam it in their eye. We're going to go into some stuff that is still simple, but more technical, that anyone can do. Now, one of the things that I preach, that I believe is that separates my program from so many others, is everybody teaches run, hide, fight, which
Mm-hmm.
are three physical functions. Running, hiding, and fighting are three physical functions. But they don't teach where your brain has got to be to stay on track so that you can remember under pressure and focus and effectively carrying out the functions of running, hiding, and fighting. So I'm looking forward to your influence and your feedback, and probably my program will be better once you become an instructor, because you can tell me how to do it even better.
It's one of the things that I've been working on for the program. I don't know if we'll be able to fit it all into the initial one, but we'll see. I call it the predatorial switch. And, you know, it's state training. In martial arts, we'll say, what state are you in when you apply the technique? You know, I have the technique, I can learn, put that information in my head, attributes that need to be developed for real skill, body state. What state are you in when you apply the technique? And one is, you know, where is the mind? and start to develop that switch, that is required in the heat of the moment. I've got to be able to turn that on.
Yep.
What does that look like as far as the physical body? What postures have to change? What positions of the body create it? What is the internal landscape dealing with? What am I thinking? What is the emotional energies of the body? It's a lot, but if that could be developed and you could learn to do it and then have a process that you could practice it every now and then if you're in that moment and you need it, imagine the difference that would make to someone. Taking control of this state that pulls you back and be able to change it to take action.
Yeah. And what you're describing is essentially taking control of yourself and your own reaction and abilities, which unfortunately, and again with this woke and soft culture that we have, they don't realize how much power they have over themselves and other people, and that's a problem. So what you're describing is being able to control your thoughts and your physical and mental reactions to do what is necessary to survive a situation like this.
As best as possible.
Yeah. Now, let's get into what you're involved in now, because you've got a lot of balls in the air. You teach other schools to create associations and how to manage those associations and their members. You're actually working with me a little bit with my certified instructor program, because you've already got a lot of the tools and tricks to do this effectively. So, I mean, I kind of reinvented the wheel, and you've already got the whole floor plan and everything for the wheel. So we're working together on that. But you were just out teaching the Warriors Poet Society. I mean, you're working with some big groups. That's what it's called, right? Warrior Poet. Yeah. You're working with some big names. Tell me what you're involved in now. You got a lot going on, so I don't know how you have time for that. You must be one of those guys that lays his head down at night and sleeps for 4 hours in deep sleep and wakes up 100%. I don't know how you can do all the things you're doing, but what all are you involved in now?
I have a business where I do a lot of program development, like what we're discussing, and the Warrior Poet guys, John Lovell is one of the guys that I'm working with. Known
Yes.
John for a long time.
Yeah, the president of my company literally is a fanboy. We were at the SHOT Show, and he said, "I got John Lovell's here. I got to meet him. I got to see him. I got to meet him." And he took off running and went over and he met him, and it was like the highlight of his life. So this guy's obviously, I'm not super familiar with this group, but I'm going to become. That's a big deal to work with a group like that.
Yes, John's good people, which is why I'm to the point now where I can choose who I work with, and
that's a good place to
that
be.
means a lot to me. Is who they are, what they're doing, and John, I like his vision. And he's got good people. He's a good person. So it's really good to be working with those guys and developing some programs.
You bet.
Yeah.
You bet.
So yeah, working with those guys, obviously you and I, and Jay Redmond, I've been working with him. He has a program called Overcome and Survive that he teaches. And I built the DT program for that. So that's great, getting to work with those guys. And it educates me too. I learned, I'm looking forward to the class because I know I'm going to be involved with and learn some really cool stuff, see things that I've never seen before. Outside of that, I run my own association, the Civilian Tactical Training Association, and it kind of that program fills the gaps where most martial arts lack.
Tell me that. Describe that. What does that look like? Because that's a big deal. When you say something that's established and there's a norm, and you say there's a gap, being able to fill that gap, that's a huge. You're now taking a step forward, and you're upping the game. You're upping the standard. What does that look like?
Well, an example of some of those things would be working on the gift of gab in a social exchange.
Soft skills.
The ability to have communication, to de-escalate. Have certain verbal tools available to me that I can use. To understand the elements of that verbal exchange as far as the predatorial mind. What's he thinking? Why is he doing it? Because he obviously wants an easy meal.
Okay, let me stop you for a second. I've got to interject. To me, that is so huge. That would be like saying, me teaching how to survive an active shooter. But wait a minute. What's the best way to survive an active shooter? To avoid one altogether. You're talking about literally taking a step back and avoiding a confrontation so you never have to use those hard skills of kicking the crap out of somebody or preventing them from hurting you. You're now you're now taking, and you are an agent of change, because now this is what guys in your world focus on: the physical ability to hurt or to defend. If you never get there because you stop it before it gets to that point, you've now taken the whole thing to a different level. And what's the best way to win a fight? Avoid the fight altogether.
Correct.
And that is such a grander scale and looking so much further and so much bigger, I think, than this whole being able to kick the crap out of somebody that's trying to hurt you or something like that. So I just wanted to say that's a big deal.
Yep, that's what we wanted to do, is answer those questions. And then, at some point in the exchange, if it elevates, there's physical contact. And, martial arts doesn't necessarily have a low level force idea of control, non insulting, visually appropriate, socially acceptable way of putting your hands on someone. And we wanted to build that. And then if that happens, you're still trying to de escalate, but it has to be visually appropriate because cell phones, cameras, everywhere.
Sure.
And, things are taken out of context.
Always.
So how you choose to physically interact matters, especially in this culture, because you're going to end up talking to a law enforcement officer. And then, the force goes up, the continuum of force. You have an answer that is appropriate, all the way up to lethal force. And even in assault level exchange, I kind of divide that into two parts. You still kind of can be a pro if you're trained. You have to choose things that look appropriate. Now, obviously, there's a line. If you 3 or 4 guys in an alleyway and your loved ones are there, the gloves are completely off
Absolutely.
at that point, yeah. And at that point, you want to understand and be able to implement the full spectrum of violence. But that's how TAC is set up. So since you don't see a lot of those things in arts, it kind of fits in there where they are missing some of those ideas.
God, so many things are going through my brain as you're talking, because there's so many different ways I can go with this. So you are literally, you're not just teaching self-defense. You're teaching self-defense as it applies to our world today, which has more layers, like how not to go to jail when you're totally righteous.
Exactly.
You're defending yourself or your loved ones. And I've had people say to me while I'm teaching my class, well, what's the legality of you taking out an active shooter? And I say, well, let me put it this way. I don't think there's a jury in the country that's going to say, okay, this guy walked in with a gun and shot 3 people that he's never met before, and you take his life. I'm pretty sure you're going to be okay. But how many times has the good guy gotten in trouble just for defending himself from impending doom and death, but because of litigiousness and the jacked up criminal justice system that we have in this country, which I could go on for a long time and blame a lot of people for, but you're literally teaching the intellectual side of self-defense, not just the physical side.
Right, and all the way down to the articulation, the conversation you're going to have with a law enforcement officer at the end. What can you say? What can you not say? That's important.
It's like the old adage of if somebody's gonna home invade or gonna rob you and you shoot them outside your doorstep, you got to drag them inside.
There you go.
You've got to be conscious of what it looks like from the outside and from the criminal justice system.
I agree. Yeah, and an organized education in that is not readily available. That's one of the things we're trying to fix with TAC.
What if Alan Baker could not be changing the world through education? What would Alan Baker be doing?
Oh, wow. Well, maybe, so if I did not have the element of the arts in teaching.
If you were not teaching the arts as you are, if you were not involved in teaching self-defense and all this physical stuff, what would you be doing? What would an alternate passion of Alan Baker's be if he had one?
Rappelling. I teach a lot of rappelling. I've trained rappel masters. Diving, dive instructor. Been diving for years. I'll probably be doing more of those things. Climbing. Climbing had to kind of slow down a little because of injuries.
Yeah,
but,
sure.
I grew up in that culture. One of my teachers at a young age, he owned a kung fu studio, but it was an old warehouse, but it was also an expeditions company. So I would train during the week, and then at the time he would say, hey guys, you want to come and hang out with us. I'm teaching a rappelling class. I'm going to teach a diving class. And we were like, wow, cool, we can come. And he was like, oh, yeah, free employees for the weekend. So we spent a lot of time doing that. I grew up in it, and I've always kind of in the background maintained it and done more with it. Mountaineering, he taught a lot of survival. So still to this day, I have times during the year where I'll go and spend time with my mentors in that area and love it.
What do you do when you're not doing all this physical stuff? Where do you retreat to refresh, re-energize, decompress? Where's the reset button for you?
Being in the wilderness, probably.
Yes, absolutely.
Is a big recharge.
The most grounding thing in the world is nature.
And we call those things that I was talking about work, but I'm actually getting paid to be out in nature.
Yeah.
And teach other people about it and be involved with it. Other than that would be training, rolling, grappling, kickboxing, knife fighting, actually getting to get in the exchange. Get in the zone a little bit. It's mindless after a certain point, and I get a lot out of that. So
I'm with you on that one, man. I'll tell you, being in nature, water and fire. I was literally last night. I flew home from a conference in Vegas yesterday morning. Came to work, was tired. My president said, "Get out of here, go home and relax." And I said, "Okay, I will." And I went. I lit a fire in my backyard. I got a great little setup in my backyard. Poured a glass of wine, lit a cigar, and I'm sitting there staring into this flame and literally feeling the negative energy, anxiousness, stress, thoughts of what I should be doing or what I need to do, just kind of dissipating. And so I am totally with you on that, man. There's nothing like being in nature or experiencing the forces of nature to help kind of relax and rejuvenate. Now it's hard not to like Alan Baker. I mean, you're just a pleasant, always smiling. You got these big, kind eyes. But give me an opinion about something that you don't seem like the kind of guy that throws opinions out there because you don't want to polarize or you don't want to offend, because you're just a nice guy. Take the nice guy away and give me something. Tell me something your opinion about that might be polarizing or might be, might upset a certain group of people. But what do you feel strongly about that you wouldn't normally just say in a group, but it's just you and I and nobody else listening? So give me an opinion about something that you think needs to change in this world.
Well, I'd have to say that I'm probably not connected to the world due to how I live. I don't watch a lot of TV.
You haven't had a television since 1991.
Right. Don't really turn on the radio. I have a couple of sources of information, but I'm lucky to get to those on occasion. I'm too busy doing and living to do that. I probably should, but so I don't know that I'm informed enough to have an opinion. But the worlds that I am in, like the defensive tactics world, I think that a lot of what's being presented isn't the best that it could be in that world. That would probably chat a few asses, but it could be greatly improved.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Now let me ask you a few tough questions because you totally skirted that. When was the last time you got really, truly pissed off, angry, mad? That does not surprise me because you just don't seem like the type of guy who gets angry very easily.
It's been a while.
Yeah. And if it has anything to do with your girlfriend, you don't have to mention that one because we don't really want to talk about this.
She's great.
Okay.
That'd be the last thing, probably.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I don't let go of that too deeply too often. Irritation now and then, which is part of life,
But one of the greatest things that you learn from what you do is discipline. And discipline, it's very easy to not lose it's not easy to not lose your temper, but you learn discipline. And discipline means not losing your temper, because if you lose your temper, you've lost control, and discipline prevents that.
You spend decades getting punched, stabbed, choked, after a while, in real life, it takes a lot. And they pretty much have to tackle you, slam you against the wall in order to start getting a rise out of you. But
Okay.
I guess just years of that, I've kind of, it's mellowed me out.
Okay. All right. So no good answer on that one. How about this? When was the last time you cried and why?
Wow. Well, I'm starting to work with a mentor on public speaking a little more in the last year or two. And having topics that are based on like emotional things, that's a good thing, because it gives more energy to the audience and it's obviously affected to your story.
Yep.
So, I talked about the wreck, and to be honest, for years, not many people know about that. I probably, Jennifer, for instance, I didn't tell her until recently. And
Your girlfriend.
correct. Like my parents knew, but pretty much no one else. It's something that I tucked away.
It's a source of pain in your life.
Yeah. So part of working with my mentor, he's like, I want you to tell that story because, what happened when I was peeing and in my mindset and everything to get out, he wants that to be part of the keynote. And so, wow, I've got to talk about this. And even talking about it to him, I can tell the story up to the point when I looked over and saw my passenger and the condition she was in. And that tore me up. I'm getting more used to talking about it now. But the last time tears were drawn was over that. I haven't dealt with it in years, and Jen got the biggest kick out of it. She was just like, whoa, not only don't know the story, but I didn't know something had that big of a hold on you. So
Was that liberating when you shared that with her?
it's interesting. I buried it.
Sure.
And
That's
didn't
what
give
we
it
do.
much energy, and
You said you didn't give it a bunch of energy, but it had a ton of energy or you never would have buried it.
it has a huge amount of energy.
Yeah.
I probably don't get that emotional about anything. Most people know me for that. So having that happen is a big deal for people around me that are close to me. One, being aware of it and not me never telling them, and the other one, if I start telling the story, I still to this day will get emotional when I start to describe the state the young lady was in. So that was the last time.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that with me. Now, one thing that I intend for this podcast to do, and that's why you're the perfect guest. We are in this EP world of tough guys, of egos, of testosterone. Even the women, they put on the air of testosterone, of being armored because we're protectors, we're knights or we're warriors or whatever. And I think that's great to have the ability to put on that armor when it's necessary to protect people that we're assigned to protect or ourselves or our family. But I am 100% want people, listeners and viewers, and I'm very open about this because I think it's okay for men to be vulnerable. And I think it's okay for men to cry. And this whole silent warrior, a silent professional thing that the EP stigma, that's great. If you wear that like a suit of armor when it's time to work. But unfortunately, this industry attracts a lot of personalities that want to identify as this big tough guy because they want to hide all the other stuff. I really want people to understand, and I think you're a good example of that, that you can be the baddest ass alive, but you got to have balance. And you got to have that masculine and feminine identity or whatever that Freud would talk about that balances us out. And egos are one of the biggest obstacles and negative things that we have if we misuse it or we allow it to affect us in a negative way. And speaking of Dr. Kovitz, one of the greatest lessons of my life, and I've said it before, on day one, when we did the welcome reception, we all walk in with our suits on, we all sit down, there's 57 guys in my class, and Dr. Kovitz sits down and he says, you better have left your ego at the door because there's no place for it in here. And I thought, I'm looking around at all these guys and I'm thinking, well, isn't ego a prerequisite to be in this job? He said, leave it at the door and you can pick it up on your way out, but it has no business in here. And that has resonated with me, not just in the world of EP, but in life, because our egos are a thing that can completely destroy us if we allow it to. We can use it as a tool like every other tool in our tool bag. In our, we pull it out when it's necessary, but we got to know when to put it back in. Tell me what you think about that.
I agree. And it's such a great visual representation. One of the things they still do at the school today is they'll write, leave your ego at the door. It's one of the first things that goes on the wall. And, it introduces the idea of there's a place for it. But if we can take this off and enter into a state of education, camaraderie, in this room, like if we left it outside the door, we are like-minded individuals. To overuse the term, we're warriors. And we have to have the ability to take that off. One, to get educated, because sometimes that ego is like a shield. It blocks information when it comes in and you don't receive it. So it's a good reason to turn it off. And another reason I think too is, communication, because it taps into passion.
100%.
There's some passion involved with this here. And the difference between a non-passionate fighter or warrior and someone who has passion and they tapped into it is huge.
Mm-hmm.
You'll say it's not the size of the dog in the fight, right? Size of the fight in the dog.
Yep.
That comes down to that willpower and his ability to tap into that. We learn that from each other, from communicating, from mentors. And sometimes your egos will block you from that. Oh, I don't need to know what that guy, he's over there, he's a tough guy.
Right.
No, man, get rid of it. Shed that shield, walk over to him and go, hey, teach me.
Yes.
Be a perpetual white belt. Always learning. Sometimes, you put on the brown and black belts, but up here, constantly yearning for information. And the ego will shut that down.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. There's a time and place for it. We talked about earlier the predatorial mindset. And part of hitting that switch is thinking to myself, I can do this. And, that is a positive place for that mindset, that there is some little bit of an ego there.
Sure.
But it's at the appropriate time.
Yeah.
Not just clicked on 24/7.
No, you're right. And that is as great of a strength as our egos can be, oftentimes it is a weakness. And I can preach all day long, avoid letting your ego get in your way. But I still do it. I still catch myself. I'm as insecure as anybody out there. And I will still, I'll catch myself and I go, Mike, you know better. You mentor other people and tell them, don't do this. I just caught myself doing it. Well, luckily, hopefully I can recognize it and change it and grow, but I still find myself. When was the last time, you don't seem, you just seem like the most humble man alive. Do you ever catch yourself letting your ego get in the way, or have you just?
Yeah, part of the type of training we do is mental training, the internal landscape, and that thing's a jungle, and it takes years to train it. The little voices in your head, the things that talk to you, it pops up every now and then, and when your defenses are down, that guy said this, that guy said that, but now it's kind of the point of like, oh, you're back.
Yeah.
You know your place.
Yeah.
Go back over there and sit down.
Yeah.
So recognizing it is the skill, like you said. And we're human beings. Yeah, it pops right up. Sometimes it's yelling at you to go. And I might even play along with it. You know what? You're right. Until I go, oh yeah, okay.
Yep.
I see what that's doing.
Yeah.
And I just gave away power to that. Maybe to someone that's not even in the room. A little comment here or there, and they're like, what? And then they're having that effect on me, which takes away my power.
Yep.
So just recognize it and go, no, I'm in control of that.
What you said, you give away power. That reminded me of a saying that I heard several years ago that was such an aha moment for me. And it just put everything in perspective in such a powerful way. I can't remember if it has to do with revenge or resentment or whatever, but essentially it's drinking poison and expecting someone else to die.
Yeah. Yep.
It's like, when you realize how foolish you are when you feel that way, because it is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. You're not doing yourself any good, and you're not hurting them, who's the focus of your resentment or your your ill feelings are energy. And it just doesn't make any damn sense at all, does it?
Right, and don't put it on the shelf. A
No.
lot of people, all these little trinkets get stored somewhere.
Yeah.
And later in the journey, that saps your energy, saps your passion. You've been around those individuals and they dealt with those type of things and they're just empty.
Yep.
It's
Exhausted.
They don't have that ability to expand and grow and project and create. And it's got a lot to do with just hanging on to it. It takes so much energy. So
It does.
recognize it, put that guy back in the chair, deal with it, find out why. And and it could be as simple as someone just, I'm going to remove that person from my world.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing.
No.
Because not everybody's meant to walk on the path with you at every moment.
And that's okay.
And that is absolutely okay.
Are you a reader?
I am trying to do more of it.
Okay.
I've been trying to create more of a habit lately. I'm not doing such a good job with my travel. I'm on the road right now for 3 weeks, so I'm not getting a lot of that done.
Do you do audiobooks or anything?
On occasion.
Okay. Can you just list 2 or 3 books or audiobooks or something that had a great influence on you?
Oh, well, 7 Habits.
Of Highly Effective People.
Yeah,
Great book.
I probably read that one once a year.
Great book.
And I'm such a slow reader that takes time.
See, you just made me feel really good about myself because I'm a terrible reader. And you're clearly a highly intelligent person. And I struggle with, I can't focus long enough on one thing. I'm like you, ADD as hell. It's hard for me to focus on a book because my brain is going like this. But you're pretty evolved in your consciousness, I think. But it wasn't necessarily books where you got it. Obviously, a lot of personal experiences. So what else besides 7 Habits?
Lately, I don't have anything.
What do you like business books? Do you like fiction? Do you like,
The bulk of what I've got in my library are all martial arts related.
Okay.
Recently, I've been getting more business. The stack's getting higher that I am staring at night. But that's probably the 2 main subjects.
What if a young person came to you and you had 60 seconds to give them a piece of advice to help change their life or help them evolve, what would you tell them?
In relation to this topic, don't read a book, find a mentor, find a living mentor, and someone that's making real change in the world, a Sun student. They're creating life.
Let's talk about that. I love that. When we did our live stream, you talked about Sun students and there was another one, Moon student. Let's break that down because that was awesome. To hear you, I'd never thought in terms of that before. Can you talk about that a little bit?
The way I was originally taught it, you have a Moon student and a Sun student. A Moon student reflects light. They're the type of instructor, mentor, or student. You teach them, they have the list, and then when they go to teach or impart, they just go down the list. Regurgitate it. Right, which is okay. There's a place for that. A Sun student is someone who creates light. Maybe they've gathered information and they go, I'm going to do this better, and I'm going to change it. A lot of times they're shunned by society. That guy's crazy. He's not following the normal path.
Right.
And then 20 years later, they're geniuses.
Right.
Bruce Lee.
Yes. And when we were talking, that's the one I used. That's how it clicked for me. Because Bruce Lee, who knew so many different disciplines, he took the best of each discipline that he believed was the best and created Jeet Kune Do, which was a new discipline that nobody had ever seen because he created it himself. So he took that light and literally created new energy from it.
Yes. And so when I'm talking about finding mentors, I want to find Sun mentors because that is living knowledge. And, probably I look at kind of books as dead knowledge. It's not that it's not good and you should read, but if I could go and spend time with you, you're changing. You said, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to create this thing and I'm going to help people and I'm going to seek information, continuously grow. And maybe there's some other people out there doing it, but you're at the front doing it. So now if I recognize that, I just want to go spend time with you. To me, it'd be more valuable to have living information and knowledge in this conversation than to go read a book. Like I could probably read this book, but I probably could learn way more from you if I could just get in the room with you. So to me, the $1,000 to spend an hour with you would be worth more to me than buying the book. Because I seek that more than reading.
And it would be interactive because you can actually ask clarifying questions and
Yes.
understand things better. That makes a lot of sense.
And it's lost today. You know, we spend so much time talking to electronic devices. This is where energy and power comes from.
Yeah.
It's how it's transferred.
So, what would you tell that person? Find a mentor?
Yeah, go find, depending on your path, based on your life blueprint, where you want to go.
Yeah.
There's going to be certain people who, you want to bring into your inner circle, your network as a mentor. Find that person.
Yeah.
And develop a relationship with them. Because generally, I think people like that enjoy the right type of student. You have someone that go, well, he'll pay me to do that. But if I've got a student with passion and he's effort, he wakes up, at 4 a.m. to come meet me at 5 somewhere. You see that, you go, yeah, I want that. That helps me because that challenges me. He's going to ask me questions and I'm going to go, you know what? I never thought of that before. Now I'm going to go learn, come back, teach him. And it's a learning triangle. I learn from my teachers, I learn from my students, I learn from my peers.
Yeah.
So
that's a really good point. And to something I could almost hear you say in my mind is we can learn from our students as well.
Oh, yes.
Because everybody's going to have different perspectives. And a different brain or mindset or way of thinking might be a fresh perspective for us, that because we're not that person we never considered before.
Correct. It's part of being a wisdom seeker.
A wisdom seeker. I like that. Where is Alan Baker going to be in 5 years, 10 years? What haven't you done yet that you want to do?
Well, I am working on doing more public speaking.
By the way, I've been watching your, do you call it a podcast? I'm watching your videos online where you're just literally speaking into the
Yes.
camera. You seem very comfortable to me. Like you are knock it out. I couldn't do that without stumbling and stammering. In fact, I've got to drink a Red Bull just to sync my mouth and my brain signals. Otherwise, I get tongue-tied. You seem like that comes very naturally for you.
I had some mentors who pushed me to do the podcast, and it took me a while to do it. And I finally said, okay, I'm going to do it. And they said, look, you are going to suck for the first 100 episodes. So they were like, don't tell anybody, just do it. And they said, I want it to just be you, no guest. And I was like, why? Why do you want me to do that? And they said, well, it will make you better. And I gotta say, so far they're right. It's made me have better presentation, work on my speaking a little more. So that's how that got started, and it's been great.
How many have you done?
I've done 17. I think the guy that's the editor has only released up through 8 or 9 now.
So you got 108, or you got 83 more to get to that 100 mark.
Yeah.
But to me, it seems like you've already got 100 in your belt. I mean, you don't pause. It doesn't seem like you get stuck. You just start talking, and there's a very even, very natural flow.
Thank you. I'm trying.
Everything you do and say and preach and stand for is positive. Everybody needs more of what you represent. I mean, in this screwed up world we're in, we need to be fed more of what you're putting out there and what you stand for. That's a fact.
Thank
okay. You. Yeah. And I want everybody to get more of that positive influence, inspiration, determination, empowerment. We all need more of that. So, well, listen, I want to thank you, Alan. I am thoroughly enjoying the process of becoming your friend. I would call us friends at this point, but it's a new friendship. I would like to think that it will grow to be an old friendship one day.
So.
I have a tremendous amount of respect for you and everything you're doing, and I'm honored that you would be on here. So I want to thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Honored to be here, and it goes both ways.
Awesome, thank you, and stay tuned for a lot of great things to come from this guy and from us together, because it's going to be awesome. Until next time, please connect with me on your favorite social media platform where you can follow me on my personal journey, including the fun stuff I do with people close to me to celebrate our lives and our victories.